The glow of the phone screen painted Alara's face in an eerie blue, the only light in her otherwise pitch-black bedroom. It was past 2 a.m., a time when the world outside hushed, but the digital realm roared with endless scrolls and fleeting trends. Alara, a self-proclaimed digital native, had seen it all. Dancing grandmas, questionable life hacks, and enough cat videos to fill an arc. But tonight, TikTok had something new, something that made the hairs on her arms stand on end, despite the warmth of her duvet. It was called the final frame filter. She'd first seen it on a mutual story, a fleeting glimpse of a distorted, grainy video of someone's supposed last moments, followed by a frantic, typed message, "Do not use this filter. I can't close the app." Alara, ever the skeptic, had scoffed. Probably just a clever marketing ploy, a new ARG, alternate reality game, designed to go viral. Yet, a prickle of unease had settled in her stomach. Curiosity, as they say, kills the cat. Or in Alara's case, perhaps the user. She scrolled through her For You page, the algorithm, ever attuned to her recent searches, quickly serving up more videos about the final frame. Each one was a chilling tableau. A car plunging into a ravine, a shadowy figure emerging from a darkened alley, a sudden violent lurch followed by static. The comments were a chaotic mix of fear, disbelief, and desperate pleas for help from those claiming to be trapped. "It's not real," she muttered, her thumb hovering over the filter icon. "It's just code, pixels." But her heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs. What if it was real? What if, just for a moment, it showed her the end? She tapped the icon. The screen flickered, a momentary blankness, then her own face appeared, framed by the familiar TikTok interface. But something was off. The usual array of playful effects and beauty enhancements was gone, replaced by a single, stark option: activate final frame. A shiver ran down her spine. The filter wasn't a playful overlay, it was a portal. Taking a deep, shaky breath, Alara tapped activate. The phone vibrated violently in her hand, almost slipping from her grasp. The screen distorted, her reflection warping into something monstrous, then dissolving into a swirling vortex of static and color. A low, guttural hum emanated from the phone's speakers, a sound that seemed to vibrate in her very bones. Then it cleared. What she saw wasn't her bedroom. It wasn't even a place she recognized. She was in a small, cramped space, dimly lit by a single flickering bulb. The air was thick with the smell of damp earth and something metallic, like old blood. Her perspective was low, as if she were lying down. Above her, a rough-hewn wooden ceiling, splintered and stained, pressed down. The space was claustrophobic, terrifyingly so. A sudden, sharp pain lanced through her left leg. She tried to move, but her limbs felt heavy, unresponsive. Her breath hitched in her throat. This wasn't a filter. This was real. A figure entered her field of vision, silhouetted against the weak light. Tall, gaunt, with an unsettlingly long neck. It moved with a jerky, unnatural grace, like a marionette with tangled strings. It held something in its hand, something long and glinting. Alara wanted to scream, but no sound escaped her lips. Her throat was constricted, her body paralyzed by a terror so profound it felt like a physical weight. The figure leaned closer, its face still obscured by shadow, but she could feel its presence, cold and malevolent. Then a flash, a searing pain, and blackness. The screen flickered again, returning to her bedroom, her own terrified face staring back at her. Her heart was a frantic drum solo in her chest, her hands trembling so violently she almost dropped the phone. She tried to close the app, to swipe it away, to make the nightmare disappear. But it wouldn't. Her thumb moved across the screen, but the app remained stubbornly open. She pressed the home button, the power button, tried every combination she knew. Nothing. The TikTok app was frozen, her reflection staring back at her, a silent witness to the horror she had just experienced. "No, no, no," she whimpered, her voice barely a whisper. Tears welled in her eyes, blurring the image of her own terrified face. This wasn't a game. This was a trap. She tried to force a shutdown, holding the power button down until her finger ached. The screen went dark for a second, offering a flicker of hope, then illuminated again, the TikTok app still open, still displaying her reflection. It was as if the phone itself had become an extension of the filter, refusing to release her. Panic clawed at her throat. She threw the phone onto her bed, scrambling away from it as if it were a venomous snake. It lay there, a malevolent eye staring up at the ceiling, its screen still glowing. Hours passed. The initial terror gave way to a cold, creeping dread. The sun began to peek through her curtains, painting the room in a sickly gray light. Alara hadn't slept. She couldn't. Every time she closed her eyes, the image of the cramped space, the flickering bulb, and the shadowy figure flashed behind her eyelids. She picked up the phone again cautiously. The app was still open. Her reflection, tired and pale, stared back. She scrolled through her For You page, but it was no longer the endless stream of diverse content. Now, every video was a final frame. Each one more disturbing than the last, each one a glimpse into someone else's final moments. She saw a young woman drowning in a bathtub, her eyes wide with terror. A man falling from a great height, the ground rushing up to meet him. A child lost in a dense forest, surrounded by unseen eyes. The sheer volume of these macabre visions was overwhelming, a relentless assault on her sanity. And then she saw it again. Her own final frame. The cramped space, the wooden ceiling, the shadowy figure. It played on an endless loop, a constant reminder of what awaited her. She tried to message her friends to call for help, but the app wouldn't allow it. The keyboard was disabled, the call function grayed out. She was isolated, trapped within the digital prison of the final frame. Days bled into a horrifying blur. Alara stopped eating, stopped sleeping. Her world had shrunk to the glowing rectangle in her hand. She watched the final frame videos, a morbid fascination taking hold. She started to notice patterns, subtle details. The way the light fell, the specific textures, the sounds. It was as if she was studying her own inevitable demise, trying to decipher the clues. She tried to rationalize it. It had to be a prank, a sophisticated virus. But the visceral fear, the chilling realism of the visions gnawed at her. And the inability to close the app, that was the most terrifying part. It wasn't just a filter, it was a tether. One afternoon, a notification popped up on the screen, momentarily eclipsing her final frame. It was from TikTok itself. Not a usual notification, but a stark, black banner with white text, a chilling pronouncement of her impending doom. Alara screamed, a raw, guttural sound that tore from her throat. The words were a death sentence, a countdown. She looked around her room, suddenly seeing it with new eyes. Was this where it would happen? Would the shadowy figure materialize from the shadows of her own bedroom? She thought about escaping, running away. But where would she go? The filter wasn't just on her phone, it felt like it was in her mind, a constant, suffocating presence. And what if running only led her to the very scenario depicted in her final frame? The cramped space, the damp earth, it sounded like a grave. A new video appeared on her feed. It was a live stream. A girl no older than Alara was sitting in her room, tears streaming down her face. Her phone was in her hand, the final frame filter active. Alara watched, horrified, as the girl's screen showed her own death scene, being dragged into a dark, swirling abyss. As Alara watched, the girl's eyes widened, a silent scream on her lips, and then her body went limp, her phone clattering to the floor. The live stream ended. Alara gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. It was real. It was happening to others. And it was going to happen to her. She started to pace, a frantic caged animal. Her mind raced, trying to find a loophole, a way out. If the filter showed her death, could she avoid it? Could she change her fate? She looked at her final frame again. The cramped space, the wooden ceiling, the pain in her left leg. She had to figure out what it meant. The smell. Damp earth, metallic. That was the most distinctive detail. And the low perspective. She was lying down. A grave. Was she going to be buried alive? The thought sent a fresh wave of terror through her. But why the pain in her leg? She remembered a news report she'd skimmed months ago about an abandoned mine shaft outside of town. People had explored it for kicks, a local legend about a collapse years ago. The descriptions had mentioned rough-hewn timbers, damp earth, and a lingering metallic smell from the old mining equipment. Could that be it? Was she going to be trapped in a collapsing mine? The shadowy figure. Who was it? What was the glinting object? She spent hours researching, her phone still stubbornly displaying the TikTok app, but she could access the browser through a clever trick she'd once seen online. A quick tap sequence on the search bar that bypassed the app's lock. She scoured news archives, local forums, anything that mentioned the mine. She found a chilling detail. Years ago, a miner had been trapped in a cave-in. His leg had been crushed. They never recovered his body. The local legend said his ghost still haunted the mine, seeking vengeance on those who disturbed his eternal rest. The shadowy figure. The glinting object. A pickaxe. Alara's blood ran cold. This wasn't just a random death. It was a specific, historical one. Was the filter showing her a reenactment? Or was she destined to become another victim of the mine's dark history? The notification reappeared, a stark warning of the dwindling time. She had to act. She couldn't just sit there and wait for her inevitable end. Her plan was desperate, reckless, but it was all she had. She would go to the mine. She would confront her final frame. Maybe, just maybe, if she faced it head-on, she could break the curse. She packed a small bag, a flashlight, a bottle of water, some energy bars. Her phone was still clutched in her hand, the final frame, mocking her with its endless loop. She couldn't leave it behind. It was her only link, her only warning. The mine was a desolate place, overgrown with thorny bushes and marked by rusted, decaying signs warning of danger. The entrance was a gaping maw in the side of a hill, swallowed by shadows even in the midday sun. A chill wind whistled through the opening, carrying with it the faint, unmistakable scent of damp earth and metal. Ilara hesitated at the entrance, her heart pounding. Every instinct screamed at her to turn back, to run as far away as possible. But the image of the shadowy figure, the pain in her leg, the suffocating claustrophobia, it propelled her forward. She switched on her flashlight, its beam cutting a shaky path into the darkness. The air grew colder, heavier with each step. The ground was uneven, littered with loose rocks and debris. The wooden supports overhead were rotting, groaning under the weight of the earth above. Her phone, still in her hand, suddenly vibrated. The final frame video on the screen intensified, the flickering bulb in the vision growing brighter, the shadowy figure seeming to move with more urgency. The notification reappeared, a chilling reminder of the rapidly approaching moment. She pressed on deeper into the mine. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the drip of water and the sound of her own ragged breathing. She felt a growing sense of unease, a feeling of being watched. Then she saw it. A small, collapsed section of the tunnel. Rough-hewn timbers, splintered and broken. The distinct smell of damp earth and metallic tang. It was the exact scene from her final frame. Her legs turned to jelly. She stumbled, catching herself on a crumbling support beam. This was it. This was where she was meant to die. The phone vibrated again, more violently this time. The final frame was now playing in full screen, the shadowy figure clearer, its movements more defined. It was raising the glinting object. Ilara squeezed her eyes shut, bracing for the inevitable. She could feel the cold, damp air on her skin, the oppressive weight of the earth above. She waited for the pain, for the blackness, but it didn't come. She opened her eyes cautiously. The final frame was still playing, but something was different. The shadowy figure was no longer looking at her. It was looking past her, towards a dark recess in the tunnel. And then a sound. A faint scratching, like something dragging itself across rock. Ilara spun around, her flashlight beam sweeping across the darkness. Nothing. But the scratching continued, growing louder, closer. Her phone vibrated again, a frantic, insistent buzz. The final frame on the screen now showed the shadowy figure turning, its head tilting as if listening. Then it moved, not towards Ilara but deeper into the mine, towards the source of the scratching. Ilara's mind raced. The filter wasn't showing her death. It was showing a death. And the shadowy figure wasn't coming for her. It was going after something else. The scratching stopped. A low growl echoed through the tunnel, a sound that was undeniably animalistic, yet deeply unnatural. And then a shriek. Not human. Something else. The final frame on her phone flickered, then went static. The screen went black. Ilara stood frozen, her flashlight beam trembling. The mine was silent again, but the silence was heavier now, charged with a new, terrifying presence. She heard it then, a faint, gurgling sound, followed by a sickening thud. Her phone suddenly lit up again. The TikTok app was still open, but the final frame was gone. In its place was her normal For You page, a stream of mundane videos, dancing teenagers and recipe tutorials. She tried to close the app. Her thumb swiped. It closed. Ilara stared at the blank screen of her phone, then back at the dark recesses of the mine. What had just happened? Had the filter shown her a different victim? Had she somehow been spared? She backed away slowly, her eyes fixed on the darkness, half expecting the shadowy figure to emerge, or whatever creature had made that growl. She reached the entrance, the sunlight blinding after the oppressive darkness of the mine. She ran. She didn't stop until she was back in her car, her hands shaking as she fumbled with the keys. She drove away, not looking back, the image of the mine's gaping maw burned into her mind. Back home, showered and wrapped in a blanket, Ilara stared at her phone. The TikTok app was there, innocent and unassuming. She opened it. Her For You page was normal. The final frame filter was nowhere to be found. It was as if it had never existed. But it had. She knew it had. The terror she had felt, the images she had seen, the sounds she had heard, they were too real to be a dream. She scrolled through her For You page, a strange detachment settling over her. She saw a video of a girl, a TikTok influencer she vaguely recognized, dancing in her living room. The girl was smiling, oblivious. Elara paused the video. She looked at the girl's face, then down at her own phone. She remembered the live stream, the girl who had died. A chilling thought struck her. What if the final frame filter didn't just show your death? What if it showed a death, and by seeing it, you became intertwined with it? What if, by escaping her own final frame, she had inadvertently passed it on to someone else? She immediately dismissed the thought. It was too horrific, too fantastical. It had to be a coincidence. The filter was gone. She was safe. But a seed of doubt had been planted. Days turned into weeks. Elara tried to go back to her normal life, but something had irrevocably changed. She found herself constantly checking her phone, not for new TikTok trends, but for any sign of the final frame filter. She became hyper-aware of her surroundings, jumpy at sudden noises, her sleep plagued by nightmares of cramped spaces and shadowy figures. She started seeing news reports, small local stories that wouldn't normally catch her eye. A hiker found dead near an abandoned mine, cause of death unknown. A young woman, a TikTok influencer, found drowned in her bathtub, ruled an accidental death. A child missing in a national forest, search ongoing. Each report sent a fresh wave of nausea through her. Were these the people whose final frames she had seen? Had she been an unwitting witness to their demise? She tried to find the original post about the filter, the one from her mutual. It was gone. All traces of the final frame seemed to have vanished from the internet. It was as if a glitch in the matrix had been corrected, and the world had forgotten its brief flirtation with death. But Elara couldn't forget. One night, as she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, she heard a faint scratching sound. It seemed to come from outside her window, a soft, rhythmic scrape against the glass. Her heart leaped into her throat. She tried to tell herself it was just a branch, the wind. But the sound was too deliberate, too persistent. She slowly got out of bed, her bare feet cold on the wooden floor. She crept towards the window, her breath held captive in her lungs. She pulled back the curtain just a sliver. Nothing. Just the moonlit garden, the familiar shadows of trees. She was about to let out a sigh of relief when she saw it. A faint, almost imperceptible glow emanating from her phone, which lay on her bedside table. She picked it up, her hands trembling. The screen was dark, but the glow persisted, a faint, internal light. Then the screen flickered to life. Not TikTok, not her reflection. It was a video. Grainy, distorted. Her own bedroom. And then the perspective shifted, slowly, sickeningly, until it was low, as if the camera were lying on the floor. Above, the familiar wooden ceiling of her bedroom. And then a shadow fell across the screen. Tall, gaunt, with an unsettlingly long neck. The shadowy figure. It was in her room. Elara dropped the phone. It clattered to the floor, the screen cracking, but the video continued to play, the faint glow illuminating the figure as it leaned closer, its face still obscured by shadow, but she could feel its presence, cold and malevolent. A searing pain lanced through her left leg. She tried to scream, but no sound escaped her lips. Her throat was constricted, her body paralyzed by a terror so profound it felt like a physical weight. The figure leaned closer. Then a flash, a searing pain, and blackness. The phone lay on the floor, its cracked screen displaying a single frozen frame. The shadowy figure, its face still obscured, standing over a prone body. The glow faded. The screen went dark. The TikTok filter had found its way back. And this time it wouldn't let her close her eyes.